Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Systems and Sustainability Echo. My name is Riddle Bobadilla, and I'll be facilitating today's session. This Echo is brought to you by the Center of Substance Use Training and Telementoring, also known as CSTAT, by the Be Well Texas in collaboration with UT Health San Antonio Echo Program. This is our first session on the iEcho platform, and hope everyone is able to join and navigate this session seamlessly. So with that, I'll start with some few housekeeping items. We have live closed captions available for today's session. If you'd like to view closed captioning for the session, please navigate to the bottom of your Zoom window and select the show captions options. If you're having trouble accessing captions, please feel free to chat UT Echo IT Julio. To help us with attendance, please enter your full name, affiliation, and email into the chat. To all Be Well Texas providers, please make sure that you identify yourselves during the session, or if you're joining via phone, please email your phone number and name to bewelltx@uthscsa.edu. Also, please remember to stay muted unless you are speaking. We encourage everyone to join by video and use the chats and/or raise your hand feature to pose questions or share perspectives throughout the session. If you have any connection issues during our session today, please privately chat UT Echo IT Julio for assistance. As a note, these sessions are being recorded and will be shared on our website. Therefore, to ensure privacy, no personal health information is allowed at any point during the session. This includes client or patient names, addresses, birth dates, or any identifiable information. So at the end of the session, the Echo team will send out a post-session survey link. We kindly ask you complete it as it provides feedback on how to refine these sessions to better address your priorities. And then finally, Echo's an all teach, all learn environment. So we do encourage everyone to participate in the conversations today and raise questions. Let us always make every effort to avoid bias and stigmatizing terms so that we can continue having a safe space that's respectful and safe to learn. So with that, we'll start with some introductions. Let's start with our didactic presenter and hub team, Mathew Roosa. If you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Matt Rosa. It's good to be with you. My background is in clinical social work. I was a clinician and agency administrator, worked in governmental planning, work now as a consultant. Most of my work is in process and quality improvement, implementation support for research and systems as they work to implement evidence-based practices and engage in enhancements to their service systems. So thanks for being with us, and I'm looking forward to our time today.
Thank you so much, Matt. Kathy Hudgens, if you could please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you in this new year. I am a consultant. My background is in integrated care, putting healthcare together with substance use and behavioral health. I also work a lot with grant writing and project design and management, workforce building and training, and healthcare policy.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Briseida or B, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi. Yes, Briseida or B. Cotois. I am with Be Well, UT Health San Antonio. I am the Director for Substance Use Services here at Be Well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, B, for being here with us as well. I want to introduce also our case presenter for today, Nathaniel. If you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Nathaniel Lightfoot, and I'm the sub-director over at Texoma Community Center, and I'm a LCSW, LCDC, and peer support supervisor.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nathaniel. We appreciate you sharing your case with us today. We're looking forward to discussing and sharing and creating discussions around that. So thanks so much. So with that, we'll get started with our didactic presentation. Matt, whenever you're ready, please feel free to share your screen and take it away. I think you're muted, Matt. We'll give him a minute to unmute.
My apologies for that, folks. I got all tied up on my screen here. So let
Don't
me
worry. Whenever you're
get us
ready.
back to our slideshow here. All right. So now we're good to go. Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Not sure how I got muted to begin with. That was weird. Okay, so sorry about that. Appreciate your patience. So we're going to talk a little bit about team building, and this will, I think, segue nicely into our case presentation, where we'll talk a little bit about team and talk with Nathaniel about his team's efforts and their work. So a few key ideas that I want to share with you today related to creating a positive environment for your team. No disclosures related to finance that I have to share with you. And of course, everything that I say and that others say is their opinions and not necessarily a representation of UT Health, San Antonio, et cetera, or Echo. So in terms of our learning objectives, we want to talk a little bit about team dialogue. I want to share with you some ideas related to the difference between dialogues and discussions and how those work and how they're different. Creating psychological safety for your team as you're engaging and helping them to learn. Um, Thinking about some power dynamics that may inhibit effective teaming. And some of those power dynamics are sometimes not obvious and clear to us, but are an important driver of people's felt safety and the ability to engage in effective teamwork. And think about a couple of simple tools that you can use for enhancing your teamwork and your team practice. So I'd like to start by thinking with you a little bit about psychological safety. It's a phrase and a concept that's talked about a lot in recent years. A simple definition here: the belief that sharing and participating will be more helpful than harmful to oneself and to the team. So if I talk about something, it'll actually help me and it'll help my team. And so I don't feel any significant risk. Contrarily, when people don't feel psychologically safe, then they are feeling inhibited as it relates to sharing. They're feeling at risk, and so they're less likely to share. And of course, excuse me, when we think about teams, this is the core and critical nature of teaming. We have to be able to share with each other. So this psychological safety is the absolute foundational uh, uh, bedrock of good teamwork, right? It's the prerequisite. You can't do teaming unless people feel comfortable and able to share with each other. So how do we promote this experience? How do we reward vulnerability? When people share, lots of times when I do trainings and people share something that's a little vulnerable, uh, that might expose maybe some challenges that they or their organization may be having, I try to really reward that and encourage that and reinforce their courage and their candor in sharing with us. So how do we as systems do that? How do you as a team, how do you within your organization really try to reward people when they do share those vulnerabilities? Try to ask more questions. I spend a lot of time promoting questions rather than assertions. People, particularly when they're in positions of leadership, tend to feel like they're supposed to be the answer machines, and it doesn't encourage that psychological safety. We want people to be comfortable with asking questions and with the team being able to share responses and dialogue to try to understand whatever it is that you're working on or trying to improve. So trying to ask questions really role models that and encourages people to do that. Um, Ask about what people need, what challenges they're experiencing, what's going well for you, what's a struggle, what's a challenge, where do you find that you might have a resource that we could offer or provide that would make things a little bit better for you. So those are key ways of giving people a clear message that you care about them, you're concerned about them, that they are safe, and that their well-being is important to you. As it from a leadership position or from a peer position in terms of someone with whom you might work. So this doesn't necessarily just need to be a supervisor sharing these ideas. It could be you sharing it with someone who might work with you in the same or similar role or position. Try to have meetings with a consistent process, a consistent sequence, so that people are familiar and they feel there's some ritual and some safety. Ritualized processes help us to feel safe. We know what's coming. We know what to expect. We tend to then feel much more comfortable when we're interacting with people if that's a familiar and a predictable process for us. Try to be inclusive and have that be the norm when you're using tools, when you're trying to elicit responses. Set up systems and structures that ensure that everybody is participating. And toward the end of our chat, I'll give you a couple of tools that I think are particularly useful in that regard. So we're really trying to think about learning for everybody and for the team and for the organization. We're all trying to improve and learn collectively and try to focus on the process and try to fix the problems. We're not fixing blame or responsibility. That will really help with psychological safety. We're all collectively trying to work together to enhance things with a continuous quality improvement orientation. Things can always be better. How do we help them to be better? So again, the same definition. So when you're role modeling this, if you're in a leadership position, supervisory position, it's really helpful if you can make vulnerable contributions yourself. If you can ask questions. And one of my favorite phrases that I love to hear from people, particularly when they're in supervisory or leadership roles, when someone asks them a question is, I don't know. I don't know. Let's try and find out. Or maybe you can help me because I don't know the answer to that. Or maybe we need to go together to somewhere else or find a resource. But that's a really great role modeling to be comfortable in acknowledging not knowing. Is super helpful in terms of creating that safe environment for everybody. Ask for help, ask to let people know that you need their assistance. We often hear people give lip service to the idea of it takes a team to effectively do something, but then the same person who just said it takes a team tends to take upon themselves every responsibility and every duty, and they are not delegating or engaging or partnering. And that sends a really clear message in terms of their confidence or trust in the rest of the group. So let's ask for help in order to build that safety for the team. Think about alternative ways of seeing things, humbly assert, maybe we could think about this differently than we do. Share how you're feeling about the process, share what's stressful or what's challenging. So I said I wanted to chat about this idea of dialogue. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this, the distinction between dialogue and discussion. So let's first talk about this idea of dialogue. So it doesn't mean two. A lot of people have this misunderstanding that dia as in die two, dialogue is two people having a conversation or something. It's not the root of dialogue. Dia is through and logos, the word. So it's the idea of creating meaning through the process. So it's the stream of the conversation creates meaning. So dialogue is about interactions that create meaning and purpose and understanding. It's going from one place to another place through that interaction, right? Sort of think about a stream or a flow of a river or something. There's the water flowing, and as it flows, there's changes that are happening there. The dilemma is that very often people will think of dialogue as a synonym of discussion. These are two totally different things. So discussions, the root of discussion is the same as percussion, which is to bat stuff around, right? When we're batting it around, it's not changing. It's sort of like ping pong. Ping pong is discussion, right? Just bounce it back and forth. It's about polarities. Is it right or wrong? Is it right or is it wrong? Is it yes or no? We do it, we don't do it. We go, we stop. It's in, it's out. Those are kind of what discussions are. Very different from an exploration, which is designed to create new meaning. These are two totally different kinds of conversations. They don't have much of anything to do with each other. And yet most of us use them as synonyms of each other and as one idea. So my encouragement is that if we want to create good teaming, we separate these two things out and really be thoughtful about which one we're having and when we're having it. So let's think about these two. When we're discussing things, maybe it's a closed-ended question. Dialogues are more open-ended questions. Discussions are when there is an existing best practice. There's a way that we know how to do something, so we just do it, or we decide how and how we're going to do it. Dialogue, maybe when we need a new solution, when we don't have an existing best practice or solution. We need to do some exploration broadly and explore the ideas together. Discussion when there's an urgent need for a rapid action, dialogue when you have time to explore. Sometimes people get the misunderstanding that I'm saying dialogues are better than discussions. Well, if I'm having surgery, I really don't want my surgeon to say, well, let's just have a thoughtful dialogue about the nature of surgery when I'm in. No, this is a place for discussion. What's the process? What's the procedure? There's an existing best practice. How are we implementing that? That's a discussion zone. Now, later, when we're thinking about changing practices in medicine, as using my example, we might have dialogue. So, again, using these two different tools in different places where they're appropriate. When you're discussing, you want the team to practice what they already know. Your team already does certain things, and you want to support them in doing those things that they already know how to do. Those are discussions. Versus a dialogue when you're trying to create something new or learn something new or be creative. Right? So try to think about those as two very separate things and two very different kinds of conversations that you can have to build your team's cohesion and your team's strength. I want to think for you for a few minutes about the power dynamics as it relates to uh, how people perceive the power dynamics within your organization. Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you all a question. First question is, how top down is your current work environment? You're not going to answer this. You don't need to tell them, on a scale of, let's say, 1 to 5. Here we have a 1 to 5 scale. 5, it's always top down. 1, it's very egalitarian. 3, it's kind of a mix in between in terms of how decisions are made and the sort of power dynamics. So pick a number for your current environment. You don't need to share it. You don't need to chat it. It's going to be just private for you. And then after you've done that, in regard to the second question, how top down was your very first job? You might be in your first job, so for you, for those of you for whom that's the case, you wouldn't have a different answer. But what's the answer to the second one? Is it the same number? Is it a higher number or a lower number? One of the things that's interesting is when we talk with folks about this, the perception, this is to the graph on the right, the perception of power sharing as it relates to the level of power, people who have more administrative and higher levels of power in a system tend to perceive the system as more power sharing, as more egalitarian. So they would give it a lower number when we're talking about this top-down question. Those people who have less power in an organization tend to perceive the organization as being more sort of power centered at the top, more top down in its orientation. So they would probably give it generally a higher number. And that, of course, has everything to do with the position from which you're seeing the world of your organization. This is an important factor in thinking about having empathy towards your team members. Those who have less power tend to perceive the circumstances as being more kind of controlled by people who have more power than them and that they have less of a voice. It's particularly important for those who move into power positions to remember what it was like before you were in that position, to have empathy for people who might perceive the system as not hearing their voice. And so then what can you do from a leadership position to build team and to try to create the voice for those who might perceive themselves as not really being at the table for decision-making processes. I have a few tools that I use a lot to support dialogue, to support shared decision-making, to engage the members of the team in the process. I intentionally am going to send you with these resources to 3 different places. There's 3 tools that I identified them in 3 places because these are 3 really nice resources related to tools for teaming, for doing effective teamwork. So the first one is nominal group technique, and I'm sending you to NIATx website here for that. So we'll share this link with you. We'll share all these links with you. And so nominal group technique is a way to do structured brainstorming. And as a way to engage the team in coming up with strategies and coming up with an array of ideas through really structured brainstorming, which is designed to cultivate the voice of everybody, to make sure that everyone is included in the process. The second one is from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement. And I want to encourage you to go to IHI and kind of check out their resources. Um, and I think we might have changed the content here in terms of it having an actual linking to a specific tool. So I'll check that once we're wrapped up with today's session. Um, so the, the, that one I think is in reference to the walkthrough, which is a strategy that we use to understand the customer's experience by role playing what the customer encounters and trying to understand it by having that role play process. And the third one is ASQ, American Society for Quality, and the quality resources that they have on their website, which is talking about flow charting, which is a way of mapping a process flow, a workflow, which is a great tool for pulling a team together to identify the workflow, to come to agreement about what it looks like, where it might have some challenges or flaws, and where you can give voice, as we were speaking earlier, to the members of your team so that they can feel confident and you can cultivate that psychological safety so your team members can feel confident and comfortable in saying, here's how this works, here's how that might be a struggle, these are the parts of the process that I think we could improve, or where we're having some challenges, or where our customers are getting a little grumpy because something's not going well for them. So these are all examples of process tools that can be used to really cultivate the team's engagement. This is critical because if we just ask our team to share, and then wait for them to speak, we're really not creating an environment of psychological safety. We're really not creating an environment that's engaging them. On the other hand, if we say, here's a tool we're going to use, and the structure of the tool is designed for engagement, then we're much more likely to have a felt sense of safety, and we're much more likely to have more participation. I sometimes hear people say to me, particularly some in leadership roles, I ask my team members what they think. They don't share. And so I end up just doing it on my own because they're not responding. So I'm trying to engage them. So I usually have some version of a conversation where we explore certain tools, because if we take the customer orientation to this, the team is the customer. If we're asking questions and asking them to participate and they're not participating, apparently we're not asking them the right question, or we're not using the right process, because most people want to have a voice, most people want to participate, and there's something that's inhibiting them. So we need to change our process or change our structure so that they feel comfortable and that they can feel as though this is that their voice is valuable and that it's safe for them to share it, and that there will be good results as a result of their sharing. I use this proverb all the time. It's a simple African proverb. I actually first encountered this on the bottom of a Snapple tea lid. Truly, I did. Saw that great phrasing, and I've used it ever since. Many of you have heard this before. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it's easy for people who are operating on their own to just move quickly, but the sustainability and the capacity to move any distance or to achieve any significant goal is very limited when you're not engaging your team. So we need to use tools, some of the tools that we were just talking about, and other structures, which take some investment in time and energy. It's not quick. It takes a little more time. All of us have said, oh, never mind, I'll just do it myself, because what we're saying is it's frustrating and it takes too long. But think about the message, how that message is heard on the other side, and think about the short-sighted nature of that perspective. I'll just do it myself, and then I'll just continue to just do it myself because I'm not engaging, supporting, educating, empowering my team, and we're not going to grow together, and they're not going to enhance their skills. So I need to slow down, take some time, and invite them to partner with me, invite them to work with me, in so that we can function as a strong team. So with that, I want to say thank you. I appreciate everybody's attention to those ideas. we can certainly explore questions. I know we're going to transition into our case presentation, and I'll kind of make a couple of comments when we do that, but I'll stop right now and see if we have any initial comments or questions in response to what I just shared.
Thank you so much, Matt, for this great presentation. Any questions or comments from our Learning Network? Yes, Andrea?
Yeah, I added my question in the chat in case you want to read it for everybody. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Andrea asked, you talked about rewarding vulnerability. How do you do that in a big team?
Yeah, so in a big team, Andrea, are you thinking about a situation where there might be sort of a performance anxiety for people to be vulnerable and to share when it's a large team? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that that is a meaningful concern. I do think sometimes you can create safety in individual encounters with people and encourage them in the team, encourage them to then share in the larger group. Sometimes it's about extroversion and introversion and people's needing to have some exposure and opportunities to practice the sharing. So they might need smaller environments and also thinking about the viability of the big team meetings. Some teams tend to have these massive meetings once a week where there's 27 people in the room. Is that really viable teaming opportunity? I don't think it is. Most functional teams can't be that big. So thinking about subgroups or subdivisions where there are practical tasks and activities, and that's the place where the vulnerability is probably safer and more comfortable, and that's where actual good teamwork occurs in that subgrouping or smaller grouping. That's a great question.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Matthew? Awesome. Thanks so much, Matthew, for this great presentation. We appreciate your time and we'll look forward to hearing you in our case discussion as well. Now we would like to share some announcements with you all. Julio, could you please share the announcement slide? Perfect. So the Center of Substance Use Training and Telementoring offers technical assistance for various substance use disorders, needs, or topics through our network of subject matter experts. To request technical assistance, please complete the online request form that was just shared in the chat. Next slide. To discuss a case at our Systems Sustainability Echo Series, please send us an email at cstat@uthscsa.edu. We will make it easy for you by providing a short form that will allow you to discuss systems challenges with our community of learners as well. Next slide. And then to claim CMEs, please text attend 100-98239 to the number on the screen. Please remember to use the email that you used when you registered to the CME tech system as well. And Echo IT put that on the chat. And then there will be no Systems and Sustainability Echo session in February, as we invite you to join us for the Texas Substance Use Symposium in El Paso, Texas, which is the next slide. The symposium is now open for registration. It'll take place in person or virtually February 27th through 28th at the Hotel Paso del Norte in El Paso, Texas. So we hope you're able to join us. The next slide, Julio. We're still accepting exhibitor sponsors and exhibitor applications for the 2025 Texas Substance Use Symposium. 100% of your support will go towards providing a free continuing education symposium for all attendings, funding travel grants for experts in the field, and underwriting other events-related costs as well. So to learn more, please visit our website at texassus.org/sponsor TexasSUS. Thank you. Now with that, we'll jump to our case presentation for today. Julio, if you can now bring up the case slides. And then Nathaniel, once you see the slides up, please feel free to tell us a bit about your organization and what are some challenges your organization is currently facing as well.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, as I said before, my name's Nathaniel. Most people just call me Nate, and I'm a LCSW and LCDC and a peer support supervisor at Texoma Community Center. We are a nonprofit organization. We've had CCBHC status and are the local mental health and behavioral health authority. We have all the different services here, so everything from substance use disorder treatment, mental health, IDD, child and adolescent programs, integrated healthcare, peer support. We have tons and tons of different programs. We aim to kind of be like a one-stop shop for mental and behavioral health services within our three counties. We primarily serve Fannin, Cook, and Grayson counties. Grayson is our biggest service area with a population of about 140,000, and then Fannin and Cook County combined is around 80,000 people. So pretty small, pretty spread out, especially Fannin and Cook counties. We deal with a lot of rural clients that are, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour driving distance from our main center. We do have satellite offices in those counties, but even within the county, sometimes, clients are living out down dirt roads far away. We do provide transportation and other services to get them in. But all of that stuff equals a higher cost per service for us if we're providing them free transportation from so far away. As well as a lot of non-reimbursable services. So a lot of the grants and contracts that we receive, we get reimbursed for providing individual or group counseling, but they don't cover transportation. They don't cover the time and effort that it takes to go advertise and do outreach and do all of the other things for our communities. So each client that we get in ends up costing the center a lot more money. And there's not really funding for those things that we've been able to secure. We also end up competing a lot with Collin County, Tarrant County, and Dallas County, kind of in the DFW area for a lot of the same and similar grants. And when we're serving such a smaller area that's more spread out, a lot of times it's a struggle to get those grants. And then when we obtain these grants, so our program alone has 6 different contracts and 6 different funding sources. And as y'all are aware, each of those come with separate measures, separate things that we have to track, report, complete audits for, renew those grant applications, sometimes yearly, sometimes every other year. And that takes a whole lot of work in effort. And when we're a small team like myself, I supervise 13 other staff. I also have to carry a full caseload, run groups, apply for all the grants, do all the things. So it gets to be a bit overwhelming sometimes, and it feels like it's a constant struggle. So then I was just looking to see, I know for the questions I think that I had proposed is how to secure some more long-term sustainability. So it's not one of those like every year we're just like, okay, come on grants, like we're just hoping for that to come through. And then how can we, as somebody who is serving a much smaller population, how can we kind of stand out among some of the bigger competitors and hopefully find ways to kind of better utilize some of that funding and the limited resources that we do have in our communities.
Hey Nate, that's a great summary. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure we'll start to explore some practical strategies and ideas as we get started in relation to some of the things that I was just talking about in terms of team and teamwork. And can you say a little something about your team, how you feel your team is doing in relation to these contracts and team challenges, team strengths, cohesion that you're experiencing? Because as you said, you're all really busy. You don't have dedicated staffing. So teamwork and collaboration are critical and essential features. So how's that area for you?
Yeah, I feel like our team is really lucky. We have a lot of super passionate individuals, whether it's our counselors, our peers, and our administrative support that, we get into this field because we're passionate about what we do. Unfortunately, one of the other challenges, is being able to pay our people enough. So our salaries compared to McKinney, Dallas, Plano, Fort Worth, are a lot less. So we get a lot of individuals that honestly just work here because they are from these communities. They want to serve this particular population. They don't really care about the money. And I think when you get a lot of really passionate, motivated people together, we all work really well, and we support each other and we collaborate really well. We try to make efforts to find free ways to do team building. So whether that's we've spent a half day to go down to some of the free museums, or we have a wildlife refuge. We'll do potlucks and things to try to build up that team around that spirit. In our team meetings, we always make it an effort to utilize some of our counseling skills. So whether that's we're going to run mindfulness or grounding exercises together as a team, and that those kind of things help us connect. And I feel like gives us all a minute to kind of decompress, and incorporates, kind of forces us to take a little break for self-care, which I think everybody appreciates. So those are some of the things that we do.
I have a piggyback question before we, open this up to the community for their strategies. You were talking about how all the grant writing, all the reporting and everything is sort of on your shoulders. And thinking about what Matt really kind of talked about of not doing everything yourself, sharing some of the responsibilities to train your team to do certain things or to take responsibility, because I know you don't want to just lay that on them too, but um, did that sort of resonate with you at all, Nate?
Yeah, and I think that is something I'm a big fan. I've worked in positions before where I was like micromanaged and somebody was over my shoulder all the time, and that didn't work for me. I have grown. I kind of got voluntold into my director position, having been here almost 10 years. Um, so I try to work with my teammates individually in how they best function. So whether that's giving them projects that may be a little bit of a reach for them, but mostly it's asking them, what are some things that you want to learn how to do that you don't currently know? What are some things that maybe you're already good at or you would like some experience at? And I do have a couple teammates that have expressed interest in grant writing, that have expressed interest in some of these kind of special projects and other things. And I want to foster that growth and those opportunities to learn how to do that. And I do so as much as I can. But then it comes down to one of those things too, that at least the first couple times it's taking even longer than it would be, right? To have to teach somebody to do it while you're doing it. And having that opportunity to hopefully at some point get to where I have more time to be able to delegate, be able to allow people to learn with my assistance, and then being able to trust them to do it on their own. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest hurdles we've had recently. Is I would love for my coworkers, sometimes they'll come to me and be like, "Hey, I found this grant and it's a really great opportunity." And I'm like, "Awesome. Do you feel comfortable writing it yourself?" And they're like, "Well, no, but I would be willing to help." And it's like, well, that's great, but I don't have, 24 hours to commit to writing to this grant with you right now. So that's kind of one of the struggles as far as that goes.
Do you have a pretty good boilerplate that you can retrofit? Just at least some of the basics, because it sounds like you're applying for some of the similar grants. Well, for the needs you have, the grants might be somewhat similar, even though the necessities would be different.
Yes, and so our center, we have our secure network. We have a grants folder where basically all of the work that we have put into prior grants, we keep that documentation. We keep the Word documents, the spreadsheets, the completed grants, together. That way, if there are similar grants or grants that ask, a lot of them will ask very similar questions, we can theoretically just go in those and pull those pieces out and use them as good examples or templates. And I think that definitely helps. Some of the bigger ones that we've done, whether that's through Be Well or a lot of the SAMHSA HHSC grants that we have coming out, though, I mean, they have, 17 different forms and exhibits and lots of pretty serious in-depth budget requirements and lots of stuff that is just really complex and complicated. It's not here's a 2-page narrative that you need to write to to apply for this. So some of those are a little bit easier to do that with, and some of them it's just not feasible.
So I know that you are not alone. And there are people on this call that are, even though they may still have some of the same challenges, have come up with some great strategies. So let's open it up to the community here. What are your strategies? What are you, even if it's just commiseration a little bit, what have you done to sort of deal with some of the issues?
And I appreciate how Kathy just said commiseration, because you don't feel like we're asking for the solution here. You all are, you're on that same roller coaster, some of you that Nate's describing, in terms of getting money, having the sunset on a grant, having staff dependent upon the staff salary dependent upon that grant, needing to keep the flow of income, diversifying your revenue streams. I mean, these are challenges that you're all dealing with. So what other angst is out there for you in terms of how you're thinking about this or what you might want to do next? How are you all doing with this? Maybe show of hands or comment if you are primarily a grant-based resource, and we can check our chat as well. A grant-based organization. How many of you have that as your primary funding stream?
Kristen's asking for a contract template, and sometimes that's basically, setting up a form that you've had to use over and over and over because those forms seem to happen. But that's post. Is that a post? Kristen, is that a post award, or is that separate or definitely different than the other ones?
Post award.
Post award. So, every contract is different when you're, contracting, maybe it's for services, or if you're partnering and you have to do a BAA or a QSOA, you all would have QSOAs because of your substance use treatment requirements for 42 CFR Part 2. But having, that would be great if anyone could just put their template up to share, because those things, if you all could, as a community, share in a folder, even if it's just an elevator script outline, which I can put up too, or an executive summary. When Eileen spoke, I think it was the last session on grant writing, tracking and evaluation, I feel like she also provided some really good resources. So if you go back to that webinar, there were some really good ones there too. So look through those. If you weren't on that session, I think even though we've moved to iEcho, they're available. Is that correct, Andrea?
Are you asking me, Kathy?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, no. I was just going to suggest, of course, I know it's not easy and not always affordable for organizations, but it looks like, according to what Nate mentioned, one of the obstacles is it's that they don't have someone who can specialize or who can really focus on just grant writing, which we know it's something like very particular. Some people are really good at it. So if it was possible for them and for some organizations to hire someone, even if it was only part-time, I don't know if that will help at all, but it's just a suggestion. Not sure that it always works, because I know those people have to be compensated, and it depends on how much resources the organizations have.
It's interesting when we think about these collaborative strategies, some of the things that you all were just talking about. when we're talking about seeking grants, sometimes there can be a reaction to that. It's like, I can't collaborate with these people. They're my competitors. We're going after the same money. And so that becomes a point of tension and consideration. There's also the rising tide floats all boats orientation, whereas if we collectively get better at this, we'll all have a better shot. So it's an interesting dynamic that people can experience with this in terms of the competitive nature. Virginia shared in the chat 100% grant funded at Longview. And so Virginia, if you have any thoughts on this challenge of maintaining stability and creating efficiencies to be able to manage the multiple applications as Kathy was describing with an efficient process and tools that you've developed that you can use each time you're making applications, and so you can draw on your existing materials and templates. Do you have anything like that you use, Virginia? Virginia might not be available to respond to that question, but I'm curious if others do. Nate was describing how he has certain structures that he uses in terms of the accumulation of documents and tools that they've used for previous applications. But what are other people doing to make the process easier for themselves?
I think Virginia just answered in a chat. She's like,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
It's
Yeah.
above my pay grade. They've been looking for someone to hire that would be their specialty, which I know that's a lot of what Nate
And
mentioned.
very few of you probably have had training on grant writing when you got into this biz. I think, Nate, you said you were selected, and then you just had to learn how to do it on the fly. And in previous sessions when we had grant writing, the grant, grants.gov, there's a lot of resources to sort of walk you through it and more tools than we ever had before. And so sometimes just writing it and passing it around and looking at, and you can pull down successful grants that were written for those particular funds. And you can even, I mean, who cares? You can copy, not copy and paste, but you can copy that sort of format because whatever they were doing, not the content, but the format is the thing. People get so overwhelmed by that. You only get 3,000 words to answer this question. And then you're counting words and spaces. Oh my word. You know, um, look to see what was successful. And then evaluate with your team, even if you do it for one meeting. What was really good about this one? I wish you all would share those things, but I know that you all are competing. But I'm sure, maybe B can talk about this, but B, well, you all have grantees, you're helping them be successful with the funding that you're giving them and maybe looking at what worked before and try to replicate that. But you don't want to start over every single time. And I think that has been the problem for most people I've worked with. So you don't necessarily have to have a grant writer. You have to have someone who's a good writer and then here's the other thing I've seen before. You get these grants and then the same person's writing them, but they're writing checks that other people have to cash, okay? You know the services, but your team members have to execute it too. And getting somebody to take ownership of okay, this new project, anybody want to build this thing that we're trying to do and see how it really fits with what we're already